So we're just going to assume that climate change is real and that it's caused by human activity. And there is scientific consensus on how to solve it. We have to eliminate our emissions of greenhouse gases. And the way to do that is, first, of course, we have to identify where these emissions are coming from. And there are 5 different sectors that create emissions. There's the transportation sector, which is things like cars, motorcycles, ships, planes, etc. Then there is the electricity sector, which is creating electricity to, power our homes, light up our lights, and power our microwaves and laundry machines. And then there's industry, which is manufacturing stuff, and that's mostly really high temperature things. So you usually have to burn things like coal and oil or gas. And then you have buildings, which is mostly heaters and stoves, which is, again, mostly natural gas. And then you have agriculture. That's like cow burps, which releases methane. And the crazy thing, I didn't even know this until recently, but apparently one cow releases on average the same amount of greenhouse gases as 4 European cars per year.
Wow.
So
cows release a lot of gas.
A lot of methane. Yeah. So, if we look at these 5 sectors and we say, okay, how do we cut the emissions here? The first thing we have to do is just to electrify most things, meaning convert all cars to electric cars, motorcycles to electric versions. Planes are more complicated because you would need a very giant battery in order to be able to get the energy necessary. And then industry is also a little bit complicated because it's a lot of heat, but electricity is fairly easy because electricity is a secondary form of energy. So you have to create it using a primary form, which could be coal, gas, oil, solar, wind, nuclear, or hydro.
Okay.
So the goal here is to electrify most things, electrify buildings, so you don't have stovetops that are gas. They are electric stovetops, and then you have heaters that are electric as well. And then the second phase is to decarbonize, meaning just make sure all of that electricity comes from clean energy sources like wind, solar, hydro, or nuclear, also geothermal. So here's the thing. There are countries in the world that have already decarbonized their electricity, meaning they get their electricity from clean sources. So one example is Iceland. We also have Sweden, Finland, and Ontario in Canada is also a place where they decarbonize their electricity. And when you look at these places, they rely mostly on either hydro or nuclear. And hydro, as you might know, is geographically limited, as is the case with most renewables. Nuclear is the only one where you can build pretty much anywhere. I mean, there's some people who say you shouldn't build on, in Japan, for instance, because there is a lot of earthquakes and more prone to accidents. But you can build pretty much anywhere, even in the desert. And as you know, nuclear has this really bad stigma, really bad reputation that was caused by a few accidents and just pop culture. So just looking at all this data and understanding that nuclear has to be a part of the solution, and also knowing that it has this terrible reputation, and seeing that wind and solar are kind of winning in the public arena. People love wind and solar, right? And batteries. There's a lot of advocates and proponents of this technologies, but nuclear doesn't. And I just saw this opportunity to use pop culture in a way to change public perception, so there is wider acceptance of the technology.
Yeah, it seems like, from my super general surface level understanding of nuclear energy, it seems like at a basic level, nuclear has the most potential to bring the most amount of people out of energy poverty by the way that you produce energy, which is by splitting atoms, and you create massive amounts of energy. And there are a lot of things when I was going through, like I didn't even believe some of the things that I was hearing in TED Talks, because like you said, the perception is so different from the facts. And for you, are there any, when you were first starting to get into nuclear energy, are there any facts that you came across, or any things in particular that you heard that were so crazy where you thought this can't be true, and then you looked into it and it was actually true? Something like if you told someone today, they'd be like you're lying, like that's not real.
Yeah, I think that one was obviously the number of deaths caused by accidents. I assumed they were in the millions. You know, when you hear about Chernobyl and you hear about Fukushima, most people assume that they're in the hundreds of thousands or millions of deaths. And when you hear that the confirmed deaths are much, much lower than that, and, you know, I'm careful about using numbers here because radiation is something very complex that we're just starting to understand. But it's definitely, currently it's definitely underneath 100 deaths caused by radiation exposure from these accidents. And, you know, of course there's other things to account for instance, cancers that will show up later in life, and it's just very complicated to try to attribute a number, but it's definitely less than hundreds of thousands of deaths. And then the other thing is just the power of the atom, the energy density. In one of my videos, I talk about how and uranium pellet, which is the fuel used in nuclear power plants, which is roughly the size of a gummy bear, has as much energy as 149 gallons of oil or 2,000 pounds of coal.
So one uranium pellet, which is the size of a gummy bear, has as much energy as 149 gallons of oil
or
and
2,000 pounds.
2,000 pounds of coal.
Right. These numbers are, I don't even think we can understand them because it's mind-blowing. So these are some of the things that definitely surprise me a lot. And I think there is a lot of people get into nuclear and they end up going a little bit crazy. They become nuclear bros because they feel much like, you know, when you get out of religion and you learn that it was, you know, kind of the Bible was a lie, and you go like militant atheist and you're like, this is stupid. I feel like people that get into nuclear go through a very similar phase just because they feel like they've been duped, and now they're more prone to believing other conspiracies.